Good morning and welcome in. Let me just move the angle on that camera a little bit. I look as if I'm a mile away and I'm not particularly. So good morning, my name is Helen Jennings. I'm a Stampin' Up demonstrator based here in the UK, and we usually come in twice a week to do some crafting, and so that's what we're going to do this morning. So welcome, do come on and say hello, whether you're joining me live or whether you're joining on catch up somewhere along the line, and let's have a little bit of fun doing some creative things this morning. Now, I don't know whether you ever have those weeks. I sometimes have weeks where everything goes to plan. I seem to get lots done. And then I have weeks where there seems to be so much going on around me that it all ends up being a bit mad. It's been a mad week this week, but so let's take 5. Let's take a deep breath and do some crafting. Let me bring in my down camera and we'll spotlight that. Let me just turn my phone to silent so that we don't get any phone calls. And this is me. So www.love-a-duckie.co.uk. That is where you will find my website, Morning Jackie, and that is where you will, if you follow me on Hi Glenda, that is where you'll find me on all social media under Love-a-Duckie. So if you go looking for me, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of those places you'll find me under Love-a-Duckie. So that's the name to remember. Let me move that to one side. Just a quick reminder that there is now the Altogether collection available with all the natural tone blends and the stamp set, die set, and DSPs that go with it. So a really great little collection. So that is now available. The blends will be available in the new annual catalogue, the 2022 to 2023 annual catalogue when that goes live. But these other things are only going to be available until the end of this current annual catalogue. So these are slightly more time sensitive. If you want those, you need to get your hands on them. So let's move that to one side. And the other thing I didn't have time to print off this morning, let me just bring in this piece of white paper and see if it is our theory that it is my camera trying to focus on those checks and things on that paper that makes it pulse. The other thing that has been launched this week, which is beautiful, is a new kit. And I haven't printed off the bit yet, but I will do in time for Monday. But if you fancy a piece of home decor, there is the most beautiful new kit that has been launched. That is got magnetic clips on it, and you can make up all the little envelopes and the cards and the things to go with it. A 12 by 12 magnetic notice board, which is just beautiful. So do look out for that, and I will be putting some posts up about that later. But yeah, that's definitely a one to look out for. But let's come back to today. Now on Monday we were looking at this Flowering Rain boots bundle. We didn't actually look at any of the bits in the catalogue, so there's some really nice samples as always in here. It's just a beautiful set, and I'll remind you in a minute of the ones that we created on Monday. And as always, remember that with our bundles now, from in this catalogue, the bundles are listed alphabetically, which makes them much easier to find. So here it is, the Flowering Rain boots bundle, and the bundle in the sample with the little index bit at the back is going to be different from the samples at the front. So that gives you an extra idea, an extra little bit of creativity to play with. So always check out the samples in the index as well. So there's lots of things there for you to look at and to play with. So on Monday we created 2 cards. We made this little one here. Ooh. move that out of the way, and now the camera very definitely has thank you, has gotten into as unfocused. So we made this little one here, which was a fairly simple stamping, apart from we die cut the tulips at the top here, and that really sort of nice greens and reds colour palette, just lovely. And then we have this one here, which we die cut a few of these bits and layered them up and create a row of tulips across the top. So rather than the flowers growing out of flower pots or out of watering cans, which you can obviously do with these, we had the flowers in the garden and the water crans and flowering pots scattered in amongst them, with a few of those brass butterflies in there. So that was our 2 cards that we created on Monday. So let's have a look and see what we're going to play with today. So same set, just going to have a bit more fun and do a few more different things with it. So the first thing I thought we'd do is that we'd bring in some of the celebrate the rainbow and sunshine celebration papers, and that we'd have a bit of a play with that, because I haven't yet punched out any clouds, and I thought clouds and wellies would go quite nicely together. So I thought we'd do something with that, and I thought we'd explore these stamps with some paper piecing, because the images on this stamp, if I can find my box, you've got this sort of grey inner shading piece in the middle of these wellies, and as I was looking at it, I was thinking you wouldn't necessarily want to stamp that in black, unless you were doing black wellies. You know, it's okay probably if you're colouring in, but even then I'm not sure, because it would be quite a dark shading. So unless you were using a darker colour card or you were colouring in with a darker colour, I thought that might be quite a dark shading. So I thought I'd have a little bit of an experiment, what would be a good colour to stamp with if you were using patterned papers and you wanted to make some wellies that were paper pieced. So with this particular patterned paper here, and this is a piece out of that celebration pack with all those beautiful bright colours and those sunshines and those rainbows and all of those things, I have actually stamped these twice with smoky slate ink. So of course smoky slate is quite a pale grey. So it is a grey, but it's quite a pale grey. This one I have stamped in solid smoky slate. I've just inked up my stamp and stamped it. And this one I have stamped my smoky slate wellies off first before stamping on the paper. And I thought with this one, I did start to go in with a grey watercolour pencil and just add in some of the slightly darker shadows where you want them. So let's die cut those and see what they look like once they are die cut. Obviously, if you were just to die cut the wellies as they stand, you wouldn't have any separation between the 2 wellies. You'd just have a blob. So you would need some way of drawing in the detail in between the 2. So let's die cut these and see which we prefer. I'll just run these through my machine. Okay. Trying to line up a die upside down. not the most sensible thing ever. Two pairs. Oh, you've gone out of focus altogether. Come back to us, thank you. So there we have our two pairs of wellies. And I think you can see that this one is definitely darker than this one. I wasn't sure whether I wasn't going to prefer the lighter one with the sort of softer stamping, but I actually think I do like the extra definition given in the more solid smoky slate. So just stamp it right on rather than stamping off. It may be as well you'd want to experiment depending on how inky your ink pad was. Maybe if your ink pad was particularly inky, you might want to stamp that off. But yeah, it's good to have a bit of a play and experiment. So both work. And as I say, with this one, I did pick up a grey pencil and just sort of gave it a bit more definition on these lines. My pencil's not particularly sharp, could do with being sharper, but just added in slightly stronger detail just there where it was needed. So both work, and it might depend on the paper that you use as to which works better, but I think I'm going to go with this one for today. So let's put my other pair of spotty wellies to one side. I'm sure they won't go unforgotten and unloved. Let me bring in my cloud punch. So here is the new cloud punch. So it's in the mini catalogue. And say, I've not had a play with this yet. Obviously, you could be using this with just ordinary cardstock. You could be punching out some card and adding some embossing paste or something to it to give it a texture. You could be punching it in vellum. All sorts of ways that you could use this cloud punch. I'm going to punch out this one just here with these sort of stripy lines on. I quite fancy this one here, so let me get my scissors and do a little bit of chopping out so I can get to this one. Do I want a third cloud? I might just bring in this heart one just here, although it's going to be chopped off on the end. You don't necessarily need to worry about that too much because we can disguise our lost end of paper by tucking it behind another cloud. So that's looking rather fun. Just wondering, I'll have a quick flick through this paper and see if there's a nice background paper we could be using. Go stripes. Rainbows might be a bit much. Come in with a darker stripe. That's quite nice, isn't it? Okay, like that. You could probably have a little strip of rainbows. Right, so let's do some cutting. To grab a piece of full party card. So I think we'll go Bermuda Bay card base. So let's just cut that. A bit of a pool party mat on the top. The card looks as if it's been in the wars. Let's trim that end piece off. Let's bring it this way around, I think. And this bit here, I think we will make to cut it to 7 by 13.9. And this bit I'm going to cut to 3 centimetres. That just gives a little bit of overlap. By 13.9. Right, let's have a look how this builds up together. Think about in the background here. And find my bone folder. Amazing. I've got just a little bit of a fluffy tab just there. Sit on there, and this sit on there like that. Bring in our welly boots. Our 3 clouds. It's rather fun. Let's grab a Bermuda Bay ink pad. And the stamp set better not have gone missing after its escapades on Monday. And I think I'm going to come in with Refuse Rain or Shine I'm Here For You, but I think that works perfectly with this one. Actually, I think we'll use that on the inside. I think on the outside, we're going to use this. Every storm that comes also ends. I like that. To cut a mat for the inside. I tend to cut my mats at 9.5 by 13.9 just to give a little bit more of the colour around the edge. And I think we'll cut another strip of rainbow paper to go inside. Yeah, just make it 2 centimetres. Again, by 13.9. Let's bring in some Bermuda Bay ink. It will need to be this block. Grab a little snippet of Pool Party. Ink that up. Every storm that comes also ends. Oh, lovely. And then on the inside we'll stamp rain or shine, I'm here for you. Right, let me find some glue, that will be useful. I've had classes and things this week, babysitting duties yesterday, so it's all still very much all over the place. Haven't had time to tidy up from the one. And then this evening we've got a bingo night, so they're always good fun. So I've got to go out and do some kit deliveries in a minute. And let's just add that strip to the inside, ready to go in there. Let's put these together. Now, do we want any twine or anything on here, or ribbon? No, I think that's too thick. I think I might leave it without. Let's bring in our clouds. So yeah, let's put this one. They do look quite pretty actually on the other side in the pink paper. Be quite pretty as a sort of like feature on a baby's cot mobile or something. Just trying to line that up so that we're able to disguise that chopped end. Let's have that about there. And then we will bring in some dimensionals for the top piece. I'm going to put 3 dimensionals under here because it's paper. It tends to be a little less robust than obviously if it was cut in card. And we'll put some dimensionals underneath our wellies. You can see on the back there what I mean by if you just die cut your wellies, you don't have any definition. You would then have to draw that in, which is why we needed to find a way of stamping it but not being overwhelming. So we've chosen the smoky slate. Put this inside. Oh, well, we would. We haven't yet stuck the card on the front. Tombow on the back of there. Hi, Angie. Then let's find my scissors. I need to rebuild my craft room and find all my bits and pieces. And I think I'm going to chop this into pairs of words. So every storm that comes also ends. Let's snip the end off of that. So this is just combining this lovely gardening set with that. So those wellies from the flowering rain boots, and combining those with this lovely celebration paper that you can get with a £45 or whatever your qualifying order is wherever in the world you live. Let's find something blingy to add to there. And I'm thinking if you want something really something a little bit sort of raindrop-esque, let's have some of the gorgeous, gorgeous iridescent rhinestones that will pick up lots of the colours in that paper. And there we are. Every storm that comes also ends. Well, that camera looks a little bit as if it's being a bit slow. That's because there's people in the house today and they're obviously nicking a bit of my internet. So apologies if that's a little bit fuzzy. But yeah, so there's a fun little card using those wellies and exploring how you can best stamp onto pattern paper with them. So yeah, smoky slate I think is the way to go. Or if you were using a sort of more browny paper, then perhaps something like Sahara sand. Yeah, depending on the colours you were using. But one of the paler inks to stamp that shadow and detail effect. And if you feel you need to make it a bit stronger, grab one of your watercolour pencils and add in a bit more shading and put in a bit more detail where you need it. Okay, so there's one cute little card. Every storm that comes also ends, rain or shine, I'm here for you. Cute. Right, the other thing I wanted to explore was one of the dies in the set. So we have this lovely set of dies. So we've used our wellies this morning, but it was this die just here. So this sort of trellis effect, and we looked at it the other day and sort of said that you can see the cutting lines, and obviously it is going to cut you out a trellis, a diamond shaped trellis, but we'll also leave that hole in your cardstock. So let's have a little look at that. If I carefully try and jiggle around over here with my wellies. What I've got here, and we'll ignore the back piece of cardstock on the back or the colour of the cardstock on the back, that just happened to be the colour that I'd got hanging around that I could layer this onto. You can see that I've die cut this, and when I've die cut it, I've been left with all these little diamonds or squares, depending on which way round you have them, that have been popped out of the middle. I've got this diamond trellis piece, and then the card itself has been left with this sort of this diamond pattern coming down the edge of it. So lots there to mix and match and play with. Let me move this to one side for a minute. And I'm going to bring in this card because I started to have a bit of a play. On my jumper here, I have got stuck a piece of low tack tape just to take some of the sticky out of it, just to pick up some lint and some fluff. Because what I want to do is I want to take this piece of card where I've cut one trellis from, and I want to cut a second. Now also along the edge of this die, I don't know if you can pick that up, you've got these rows of holes. So what I want to do is sort of line that that hole up so it is sitting just inside this angle just here that has been formed by the previous cut. I'm sort of almost resting the edge of the die up against there and making sure that these holes are coming fairly evenly down the side of my card. So all being well, I'm just going to stick that on there. bring in my die cutting plate. And let's run that through the machine. I want to lift this die out carefully. And I'm going to do the same again. So this time, obviously, I'm going to move it back up again. So it was at the top, it's right at the top of this bit of card, and this is a piece of 13.9 by 9.5. So I've cut that one so that it was, the top point was pretty well at the top of the card. By bringing it down, it brought the bottom point pretty well down to the bottom of the card. I'm then going to go back up again, and this time you'll be lining this edge along the edge of this die cut just here, and then making sure that all your holes are lined up fairly evenly in those angles going up. I haven't lifted the last pieces out yet. I'll do that when I finish this bit. So, oh, that moved slightly. I've got it stuck down quite well enough. Right, let's bring this in. I'm going to take that out. Let's move these across. Now, I slowly, gently lift this up. I want to whip it off because I don't want to risk tearing any of these pieces. So now, once that sort of finds its shape, we have this sort of triple diamond piece on here. We have lots of little squares from the centres. And we should have 3 diamond trellises. Yes, here's one. Here's the one we cut earlier. So quite a lot of pieces to play with. But what I did before we came on air was I did exactly the same with a piece of old olive cardstock. I've got some squares that aren't quite punched out, and some crushed curry cardstock. So I now have lots of pieces of trellis, lots of squares. All my little squares are in a little tray just here. I'll bring them in as I need them. And 3 pieces of card. Now this piece of card was not quite as long as the others. So you can see that is broken at the bottom. But if you came to put this back together again, you could use that as a bit of a feature. So if we were to put, say, an old olive trellis in there. We stuck all that back in place. Actually, that old olive piece is probably going to come to the bottom anyway, or you could just sort of snip these ends and give that a shaped bottom, make a bit of a feature of it. So what I thought we'd do, we'd have a bit of a mix and match with some different colours. So let's have a look what it would look like if we were to put an old olive trellis piece in there and some crushed curry squares. And obviously by the time you stuck all of these down, you would end up mixing and matching and having 3 different colourways. So that's rather fun. So I think we might go with an old olive card base. Where have I buried my trimmer? So this is obviously going to be one of those things that isn't going to be a quick creation. What you could do is cut all of these pieces with some double-sided stickiness on the back. I haven't. Let's make this 14.4 by 10, whatever your first size mat is. And I obviously don't know how this will work out on Imperial style cardstock, because your piece of card this way is going to be slightly smaller. No, it's, yes, it will be slightly smaller. No, it won't. Slightly longer. So yeah, you'll be fine. I was thinking it was slightly shorter, but it's the other way round. You'll be slightly longer, so that's fine. You would just need to have a bit of a play with where you started from. You'd perhaps need to bring your die just down a smidge for your first row so that it wasn't uneven on the bottom. Right, so let's stick our card base there. Right, I'm going to put some glue on here and some little doubles on here. We will stick that down. I'm going to get my inner, and obviously this was where it would be quicker if you had double-sided adhesive on the back, because you would just whip this off. But this centerpiece, let's lie that in there. So if I match up the top and then bring the rest in to meet it. And by doing that center one theory, our outer pieces should now meet. Glue that into place. Let's take this one. I apologise if that is lagging a little bit. I have my son and his fiance here today, and I suspect Sam has got his PlayStation on in the other room, so he's probably nicked a bit of my internet bandwidth. Normally on a Monday and a Friday I'm home alone. How dare they book themselves or take time off? Right, so that's that bit. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm not going to use all of these pieces because obviously we've already got the yellow in the background. I'm going to take this greenery embossing folder. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm going to emboss some of these squares. Go 11, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That was good, wasn't it? That was a good guesstimate when I grabbed those out of my little box. Let's squish those in there. This is just a standard embossing folder. So I'm going to need my plate 1 and 2 plate 3s. Just taking out my number 2 plate from the cutting sandwich. And then what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to grab myself some mini dimensionals. Excuse me, could you just move over slightly? Thank you. That one really doesn't want to play ball, does it? Stay. I'm going to go alternative diamonds in here. So starting at the top, miss one, miss one, miss one, and then this one, I'm going to miss the bottom. Put one. And then again, start at the top. And last but not least, let's take these backs off. one's off and that one's off. And let's come in with these embossed pieces. Oh, perhaps that one isn't off. Now it is. I'm sorry that is such a terrible video quality. So actually, I'm going to turn that one round just because they're not all facing the same way, and I quite like that. So we've got sort of patterns coming sideways. Upwards. Must have missed that middle row altogether. Sideways. And sideways. So quite fun. We've got some different textures in there. We've got different ways that some of the leaves are coming downwards, some are going acrosswards, different colours and things in there, and obviously a whole host of more bits that we can be playing with on other cards. You wouldn't just throw those away. They are very definitely mix and match. So what shall we have coming here on this side? It might be quite nice to have a nice green watering can. And I think we could have some bold yellow flowers coming out of the watering can, or in front of it. We'll see. We'll stamp them and have it and die cut them and have a play and see where we want them. So let me grab some old olive ink for the watering can and some crushed curry for the flowers. And some very vanilla cardstock to stamp onto. Okay, old olive. And crushed curry. Let's die cut those. Just run those through my machine. Oh, this is where you know you've used an embossing plate because it's not a fat enough sandwich. Let's try again with our number 2 plate back in place. You can always tell that your sandwich isn't right if it goes through too easy. And if you try to put a sandwich through and it won't go through, don't ever force it. If it's too thick, that's how you could break your machine. Okay, what I'm going to do is I am going to grab my watercolour pencils. And let's have an old olive one. I'm going to add a bit more colour. So we'll still get the shading because obviously that stamped area is going to be darker. But it will give us a darker watering can because instead of having very vanilla pieces, we'll have the coloured old olive. And if you feel that any of the areas need a bit more shading, you can always do that with your pencil as well. There we go. Added in a bit more shading with that, so we've just made that watering can a bit greener. Then with this one, I'm actually going to bring in a bit of pumpkin pie into this centerpiece. And just make the colour a bit stronger where the ink was, so that you're bringing back in that shading. And then somewhere we do have a crushed curry flour, a pencil. I'm going to add a bit more colour into the flowers too. Still going to leave a little bit of highlights of the very vanilla, but just adding in a bit more, strengthening that colour up. Oh, we forgot our little pumpkin pie piece on there. Let's pop a watering can up on some dimensionals. We'll pop some dimensionals behind our flowers too. Haven't stuck those on yet. I'll in just a moment. Wondering what I could add into that. I think I might come in with a bit of linen thread. Let's see if somebody answers the door for me. Yes. Oh, we would have this linen thread if I could find the end. Thank you. Mr. Brown delivery. Here we go. Now, perhaps we could wind some linen thread around our watering can. And tie a little bit of a bow. Is that end gone? Just there. Don't want that to disappear. Oh yes, that's rather fun. Snip that off and we will tweak that in a moment. Let's use that dimensional on the back just to anchor down that linen thread so it doesn't wander off. And then we can tweak with it a little bit in terms of direction and things. Let's take these off. We'll add those on there. And then that live life in full bloom. And stamp that onto this oddment of very vanilla. just having a wonder. No, I think it's not quite diamond shape. It's not quite what we want, I don't think. So let's just I'm going to fetch a little bit of old olive. And stick that to a bit of old olive. Using up these scraps, you can probably, let's guess what Helen's been using in her projects. We'll have one of those on there. There you are. Sorry, we have lost focus again. Is it that we've lost focus, or we've lost internet while it's making its mind up? I'll grab some we could use some crushed curry playful dots. Oh, what a nuisance, people. Or some of these, which are the matte decorative dots. Might come with these playful dots. They're that nice crushed curry sort of a colour. Don't think I necessarily want the bigger ones, but we could bring in some of the little ones. And now, just to add to everything else, the dogs up the road are going to sing to you. That's just how I feel, dogs up the road. Right, let's bring in both of these cards, if you are able to see them at all. So we have, I will take pictures of them and post them. Hopefully you've been able to see the way that I did them, if not the complete detail. But we have this one here with the trellis effect in it and the embossed squares that have been inlaid. We've added watercolour pencils to the stamped images to add a bit more shading. And then on this one, we have punched out those clouds. We've done some smoky slate stamping on those welly boots, just to give the outline and the detail before die cutting them. And we've combined that with that rainbow, sunshine and rainbows paper from the celebration collection. So there's 2 more cards, and to go with the 2 that we created on Monday. So a whole selection of ways that you can play with the gorgeous flowering rain boots and matching dies. And as I did say on Monday, this is going to be coming up if you are local, able to get to me here in Northamptonshire in the UK. There will be an all-day class featuring the flowering rain boots and the home and garden. And who knows, might throw in some other gardening things as well, we'll see. But it will certainly be featuring those. So that will be the 19th of March. So do look out for that and book yourself on that if you are local. Meanwhile, there's a couple of cards for you to enjoy. Let's bring up this camera. I shall now go and soundly beat the people that have been pinching my internet throughout this live. So apologies if the camera has been fuzzy. And I will catch up with you all on Monday. Have a fabulous weekend. And I will see you all very, very soon.